What's going on, everybody? This is Solaris, and today I'm going to be going through the new Super Sugo Fest characters that came out recently. We have Super Evolution for Oden, and we have Super Sugo Fest Luffy and Straw Hat Pirates dual unit, as well as Roger and Whitebeard, not a versus unit, despite looking a whole lot like one. And these are also last tap units, so these are our first dual last tap characters, and there's a lot of interesting effects going on with them. They're not just straight power, which is kind of interesting, and the character that people want the most has been Roger Whitebeard, but I have a few reasons that would encourage people to reconsider that. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the men of the hour, Roger and Edward Newgate. So they are an int, psi, slasher striker in all forms. Roger's captain ability is 5x attack for slasher and striker characters, HP by 1.2, makes int and psi orbs beneficial, and he will reduce bind, paralysis, and silence duration by 1 turn. So pretty solid for just having as captain when you're going in blind for stuff. You get paralysis and silence reduction. Not a huge health boost, it's only a 1.2. We've been seeing a lot of 1.3s and 1.25s. Even 1.5s are getting more and more common. So not a huge health boost, but good utility on Roger regardless. Whitebeard will boost the attack of slasher and striker characters by 5, HP by 1.2, boosts his own attack by 5.25, so slightly higher, and you still get those int and psi orbs beneficial for slasher and striker characters. Then, in dual form, it will boost the attack of slasher and striker characters by 5.5, HP stays 1.2, orbs matching, int and psi orbs matching for those classes, and reduces bind, paralysis, and silence duration for 1 turn. So just higher attack boost and their abilities combined there. This is our highest non-conditional, I'll say, attack boost in a character ever. The only thing really higher would be like Big Mom version 1 in Enrage mode, and that's only for herself, or Nami Robin Legend if you have empty orbs. So this is the first time we have 5.5, but it is restricted to slasher striker. It is not universal. That is a key point I need to express about Roger and Whitebeard, is that they are not a universal captain. You actually need to have slasher and striker subs, which striker subs are hard to find. Slasher not as much, because we are exploring Wano a lot, and Wano has samurais from the day ends, from the start of dawn to the end of dusk. Like, there's a lot of slasher characters that you can get from Wano. So, moving on, their special ability is actually different for Roger and for Whitebeard. Roger's special ability will reduce despair for 20 turns, and then he will increase or decrease any attack buff to be a 3x attack buff. Then he will increase the effect of color affinity buffs by 0.5 and transform for 3 turns. So this boost, the 3x attack boost, will affect any buff, any attack buff that you have, not conditional buff or anything like that. Any normal attack buff. So if you have a universal attack boost, it will change it to a 3x attack boost. And it will not change the duration. So you can have a 99 turn 3x attack buff. You can have a 1 turn or 2 turn, 7 turn with characters like Story Damalo Black from Shabudi. So there's a lot of things you can do with that. If you get a 1.1x attack boost from an island, you can create a better attack boost from it. So Roger opens that up a bit. However, it works the opposite way. If you use Toki and get a 3.5x attack boost and you use Roger's special, he will actually reduce the attack boost. So you have to keep that in mind. Whitebeard is in a similar vein. He will reduce despair by 20 turns as well, and he will increase or decrease orb buffs to 3 times. And then he will boost the color affinity of Slasher and Striker characters by 2 and transform. So if you use them both, you could get a 2.5x affinity boost, but you'll need some other character to give you that attack and orb boost in order for them to change the multiplier on it, which their batch will do for them. This character does have a super swap as well. Their base swap will change adjacent orbs into matching orbs, and then boost the attack of all characters by 1.5 for 1 turn, and amplifies the effect of orbs of all characters by 1.5 for 1 turn. So it is a very strong swap ability in itself. It is probably going to see a lot of use, and it is a way to get an attack boost and an orb boost for Roger and Whitebeard to increase the effect of. So you may not need to rely on their batch for the attack and orb boost. Their super swap, which is 6 turns, will change all orbs into matching orbs, boost the attack of all characters by 2, and amplifies the effect of orbs for all characters by 2. So a very strong swap ability. Roger and Whitebeard as a sub will probably see a lot of use, just because with super swap and one of their specials, they get a 3x attack boost, a 2x orb boost, and potentially an affinity boost for Slasher and Strikers, or you can buff your affinity boost that you have on your team already. So, very strong potential as a sub for Roger and Whitebeard. As a captain, not so much. Their Sailor abilities will boost all stats of Slasher and Strikers by 150, and make Cyan Int Orbs beneficial for Slasher and Strikers. Even more reason that they'd be a good sub. They give a lot of 2 matching orbs for Slasher and Strikers, so there's a lot of value there. And then they have Slotbind Reduction, Critical Hit, and Last Tap as their potential abilities. Their Last Tap is kind of similar to Kid Last Tap, where they affect the chain multiplier, or I guess a little bit closer to Yamato's Last Tap. But they will change their own orb, including block orbs, to matching orbs, so you're guaranteed a matching orb on them, and they will add 4.0 to the chain multiplier for their attack. So unlike Kid, who will change the chain bonus to a certain value, or Yamato, who will double it, Roger Whitebeard will add it on. So in the case where you can't get a chain boost, they will give you much more value than like Yamato would. But if you're getting a chain boost and a chain multiplier, Yamato's probably going to be much more valuable for you in terms of increasing your damage with Last Tap. But still not a bad Last Tap for them. Their Rumble abilities are an attack and HP buff to Slashers, and a speed boost to Cyan Int. And unfortunately, dual units are still not counted as typed units in PvP, so they won't get that speed buff. Their Rumble special is 32 seconds, and they will apply an attack buff to Slashers. They will health cut all enemies. They will deal damage that bypasses defense to 2 enemies, and they have a 50% chance to cleanse any attack and speed debuff to all crew members in the first 40 seconds, which is something new that we haven't seen before. So being able to cleanse these debuffs will be valuable for teams that are reliant on attack and speed, and if you can get that special off and you get that proc, that's pretty good. However, it's a 50% chance, so it's not really something that you're going to get a lot of chances to do, because it's in the first 40 seconds. You're probably going to have one chance to get that special out, and if you don't get that cleanse, then there's not much else you can do. They have a 100% chance to resist silence, and they have a 30% reduction to damage taken from fighter characters. So overall, they open up a lot of interesting mechanics for PvP, especially in the future. Other characters getting cleansed might be interesting to explore, so looking forward to seeing Roger and Whitebeard in PvP, but I like them a lot in PvE as a sub. So now, let's move on to the Straw Hat crew. Straw Hat crew, Luffy and the Straw Hats. So in one form you'll have Luffy, in the other form you'll have the rest of the Straw Hats. They are Strength Dex, Free Spirit Fighter, and the Free Spirit Fighter will be in all forms. So Luffy will reduce his own special cooldown by 4, boost the attack of all characters by 4.75, HP by 1.5, and recovers 1,000 health at the end of each turn, and will make all specials that apply class or type restricted buffs or effects apply to the whole crew instead. So I'm going to talk about this in just a second. I'm going to cover all the other the captain abilities for the other forms, and then I'll talk about that effect. As the Straw Hat Pirates, they will have the same cooldown reduction. They will boost the attack of characters by 5 with a matching orb, 4.5 otherwise. Same health boost, same recovery, and same effect to specials. And then in dual form, they will reduce their cooldown by 4, boost the attack of all characters by 5.25 with a matching orb, by 5x otherwise, their HP by 1.5, and recover 2,000 health at the end of each turn, and do the effect to the whole crew for all specials. So this effect will make it so that any attack buff you apply that would normally apply to, like, say, strength units or slasher units, that would be a universal boost. So it would affect all units. And this applies to not just attack buffs, this applies to attack buffs or boosts, affinity boosts, base attack boosts. This even affects cooldown reductions. This would affect orb barriers. However, this does not affect any abilities that would select certain characters on the crew to have this effect. And you can see this visually when you look at a buff and it says partial on top of the buff icon. Most commonly, at least most recently, you'll see this on Toki. When Toki applies her buffs after 2 turns, you'll see partial above the attack boost and a partial above the orb boost. So Luffy and the crew will not affect those kind of buffs. That also applies to characters who buff stuff like their own orbs, so like Cavendish, and characters who buff characters who are a certain cost or below, which isn't too common anymore. So Luffy and the Straw Hats are basically like the quintessential rainbow captains now, you could call them, because although you don't get to get away with stuff where there is a captain requirement, like say for example a character has to be a striker character, or the captain has to be a striker character, or your captain has to be a driven character, they wouldn't allow that to go through, but they will allow you to say take the new superclass Dofi, who has an attack boost and an orb boost for driven, and it will make it a universal attack and orb boost. It will allow you to take a lot of the super type characters who do utility and then provide a buff for only a certain type, or some type in some classes, like Bonnie, who has good utility but only buffs int attack. Using Bonnie under a Luffy and Straw Hats team would actually give you a universal attack boost. So this is a very powerful effect. In-game, it will say that if this character is a captain, that is misleading. It works when they are a friend captain as well. They don't have to just be your captain. At least as of the recording. So this is a very powerful effect that we haven't seen before, and has the potential to open up team building for a lot of different teams with different subs for this captain. And they have a huge health pool, a very strong heal, and like 5x attack is about standard. You won't see too much higher than 5x, and they're giving you for 5.25 with a matching orb. So there are a lot of opportunities for them to really have like the flexibility to clear a lot of content. Moving on to their special, which is so long it had its own slide. It will go from 23 to 18 to 16 turns with limit break. and they will deal typeless damage to all enemies and then change all orbs, including block orbs, into rainbow orbs and transform for 3 turns. So it's great to see rainbow orbs not locked to some Shirahoshi character, because nothing about Shirahoshi says rainbow. Same with like Wano orbs. It would be nice to see a character not from Wano have access to Wano orbs. But anyways, moving on. Then the rest of their special is when your crew has 1 or fewer buffs or beneficial effects when the special is activated, they will boost the attack of all characters by 2, color affinity of all characters by 2, the orbs of all characters by 2, and adds 0.8 to the chain for 2 turns, and prevents you adding any additional buffs to your team during this turn. So this effect really shines on mini bosses and stuff like that, where you don't need to have an incredible amount of damage, right? Because they will remove the ability for you to give you any additional buffs, and in most cases the only additional damage buff that you can get is a conditional boost. There are other chain boosts that you could get as buffs, but this does not stop you from using utility specials to reduce debuffs or enemy buffs and stuff like that, like Rayleigh would. When you use Rayleigh's special, you get an attack boost, an orb boost, but then you can't use any more specials. This does not bar you from using any more specials, it will just prevent any buffs from affecting your team. So it gives you that flexibility. The second half of their special, if your crew has 2 or more buffs when the special is activated, they will lock all orbs for 2 turns, increases the duration of any damage affecting buffs. I've listed a bunch of them in the database, although I don't think this list is conclusive, but it includes attack boost, orb boost, base attack boost, conditional attack boost or status boost, affinity boost, chain addition, chain multiplication, as well as chain lock or chain limit or chain boundaries, buffs and debuffs. So if you had double Luffy and Straw Hat Pirates, for example, you could use both of them on, say, a mini boss stage, and you would get 3 turns of all the buffs that they apply. You could bring that into the next stage, and if that's sufficient, then you can kill that stage with just utility specials on your subs, or you can give yourself a conditional boost or whatever other buffs you need, since the buff restriction is only for that 1 turn. So Luffy and the Straw Hats gives you flexibility in that sense. Or if you just want to extend some of the existing buffs that you have, and that's just fine too. If your subs give you all the buffs that you need, then you'll get your rainbow orbs locked for 3 turns. So there's a lot of flexibility in their special. However, they activate a bunch of effects. So if the enemy has, say, a special interrupt on conditional or on affinity boost, like Arena Crocodile does, that's out right now on global, then they will probably clear all the effects. That is a heavy downside to them, but there's a lot of characters who do lots of things, so the special interrupts on content isn't as common as they used to be. It is still common, and when they do appear, it isn't too hard to get by them. For example, you could use a support that gives you a conditional or a color affinity boost, and then use Straw Hat special, and you'd still get all the other buffs because you'd only have 1 buff active. And you can still get the more powerful attack and orb boost and chain boost with a weaker conditional or a weaker affinity boost, and it wouldn't activate the enemy's special interrupt. So there are still ways to get around that. Just like Roger and Whitebeard, these characters do have a super swap as well as a swap. However, it is much less impressive. They will change their own orb, including a block orb, into a magic orb, and then removes all slot bind and paralysis on themselves with their base swap. And then their super swap, which will take 4 turns, will change their own orb into a matching orb, remove slot bind and paralysis on themselves, and then reduce ship bind and paralysis by 4 turns. So on your entire team, if you're paralyzed, it will clear that, and it will remove ship bind, which isn't too common, and we're getting a lot of characters with limit break expansions that include ship bind. So their super swap, it's not terrific. I like the paralysis reduction is great, and it is low cooldown, but Roger and Whitebeard I would definitely say have a much stronger super swap, and it may just be that I don't see the value in paralysis reduction for 4 turns on this character. It may just be that, but on paper they seem, their super swap does not seem as strong. Their sailor abilities are all stats for all characters by 100, and they will completely resist silence on themselves. So if you use them as captains, they will not reduce silence, so even with their swap. So you'll have to use a character that removes silence if you want to use their special when they're captain. And then they have pinch healing, crit, and last tap for their potential abilities. I will mention that I believe both Roger Whitebeard and Luffy and the Straw Hats have 100% crit with 10% extra damage as their level 5 crit. So it's actually a crit ability that's worth investing in. It's not half bad. But the pinch healing one is the same as most standard pinch healing limit break abilities. Their last tap, which is a very interesting last tap, kind of similar to the last tap laws. The only requirement is being on the last stage, and it will add 1.2 times the total damage dealt with normal attacks from other characters this turn to this character's normal attack and damage. So, what this means is, when you attack with the first 5 characters in your crew, or the first 2, or however many are in your team. I'm assuming you're using a team of 6. The damage that the first 5 characters do will be multiplied by 1.2 and added additionally to the damage that Luffy and the Straw Hats will do. So if you deal 10 million with the first 5 characters and Luffy and the Straw Hats are only meant to deal 3 million, then they would get an extra 12 million and actually deal 15. And your total damage would be 25 million, for example. There are more details about it and some quirks with it, like how it can bypass a lot of defensive effects, because it is literally adding damage. It is not dealing damage to the enemy, which is really janky to think about. And there is a way for it to bypass effects like resilience, just like the Law last tap character did. So this is the highest potential damage last tap we have so far, but it is dependent on your first 5 hits. So if your first 5 hits are really strong, then Luffy and the Straw Hats have essentially an extra 5 hits worth of damage that they can deal. So it is very high damage potential in the right team setup, even if Luffy and the Straw Hats are not boosted by your captains. So that is something to keep in mind. Like, you could have driven captains with this character and deal really high damage with the first 5, and then Luffy and the Straw Hats would just essentially double that. And this is at level 5. But even at lower levels, it is a healthy amount of damage. And they also have a very interesting Rumble ability kit. They will buff speed for strength and dex, and defense for strength and dex. Keep in mind they don't benefit from these. And they will get level 2 special cooldown buff for free spirit characters. And then, once per a fight, they will revive to 50% HP after death. So even if they take a huge attack that takes 50 seconds or 60 seconds to charge up, they can just revive themselves to 50% HP, which is more powerful than you would think. It's like having a whole extra character on your team for no additional cost. And it's a guaranteed revive. It is not an RNG based revive, it is guaranteed. The only thing that changes with the level is how much health they get after revive. Then, their special 28 seconds will apply a permanent level 5 attack buff to people to your crew in a medium range, deal 3.5 times their attack in a large range, and then has a 100% chance to grant haste to all free spirit characters on your team. So, Luffy and the Straw Hats has a very interesting kit where they can just essentially buff your entire crew and then let your entire crew attack the enemy. So there's a lot of free spirit crit teams that are using them, and I think Luffy and the Straw Hats are definitely going to be a little bit of a meta breaker for PvP, so I'm interested to see what they do. And their resistance is a 250 health heal every 5 seconds, and they have a 30% reduction to driven damage. So I'm liking these class-based PvP teams, and it'll be interesting to see where they go in the future. Based on the pattern that they've shown, I'm expecting maybe fighters or strikers to get maybe a super class character next. So I'm looking forward to that. So now, to the rare recruit characters that came with this, we get even younger than we had before, Shanks and Buggy. This is not a double character, this is just 2 characters in one. They are Int Slasher Striker. Their captain ability will boost the attack of Slasher Strikers by 2.5, HP by 1.3, and they have a chance to duplicate a drop at the end of the mission, which will only take effect if they start as captains. Their special goes from 19 turns down to 12 with Limit Break. They'll do a 10% health cut, reduce bind and paralysis duration by 4, boost the attack of Slasher Striker by 2, and makes Strength Dex Quick Orbs beneficial for Slasher and Striker characters for 3 turns. So for Roger Whitebeard, this is great. You get an attack boost that you can increase to 3x, and you get Strength Dex Quick Orbs beneficial which would make all color orbs beneficial with Roger Whitebeard. You just need Recovery and Tandem Orbs beneficial. But even on Straw Hat Pirates, this is valuable because the attack boost would now become a universal attack boost. So you get a universal 2x attack boost. And the Strength Dex Quick Orbs beneficial buff would also become universal. Even though Straw Hat Pirates don't make any orbs beneficial in their captain, you now have access to Strength Dex Quick. Excuse me. Their sailor abilities are all stats of all characters by 50, and reduce the paralysis duration by 1 turn for the entire crew. So, not bad special. Bind and paralysis are pretty annoying debuffs to get around. Overall, not too bad, but they're pretty cut and dry. Nothing too exciting about them. They're just a standard rare recruit unit. Their support ability is all stats to slashers. They have slot bind reduction and pinch healing, which are 2 pretty good potential abilities to have. And in Rumble, they will apply a level 5 attack buff to slashers, a defense debuff to fighters. Their Rumble special is 25 seconds in cooldown. They will deal fixed damage to enemies in a large area, and then they will debuff the attack and speed of all enemies, and they have a 60% chance to resist paralysis. So overall, pretty neat unit. Then we have Rayleigh and Gaban, which is our second Gaban unit. Their captain ability will boost the attack of Slasher Strikers by 3 and their HP by 1.3, and makes Recovery and Tandem beneficial for all characters. So I found it really weird that Rayleigh and Gaban, as well as Shanks Buggy, increase HP more than Roger Whitebeard do, but you know, I guess they thought that Roger Whitebeard was too strong. Their special ability goes from 20 down to 13 turns with Limit Break, and will reduce silence and attack down by 5, and it amplifies the effect of orbs for Slasher and Striker characters by 2 for 2 turns. So there is Um, so for them, it's very similar to the Onigashima raid Zoro that came out with Last Half Luffy. But overall, still pretty solid. They have a 2-turn boost of orbs rather than the 1-turn boost that I believe Zoro has. But Zoro also locks orbs, so they're a little bit different. Excuse me. Their sailor abilities are 5 turns of silence reduction on themselves, and they'll boost all stats by 60 for all characters. For support, they will support side characters. They will add 11% attack to base attack, and they have enrage and pinch healing potential abilities. In Rumble, they will buff HP and crit rate on slashers, and their special ability at 27 seconds will buff attack and speed for slashers and recover 2000 HP to your crew in a medium range. And they have a 60% chance to resist bind. So overall, another pretty solid unit. And now we get into the Super Evolution Oden, which I think probably takes the cake for best Super Evolution probably ever. Like, I don't feel like a Super Evolution has made a character this valuable before. So Oden is a strength slasher free spirit character, just like before. He'll boost the attack of all characters by 4.5, HP by 1.5, and then changes Dex and Tandem orbs into Wano orbs. And if any character has a Wano orb, boost their attack by 5 instead. So this used to be restricted to only strength characters, but now it is not. So Oden has become a much more viable captain for anyone, and has a way of getting Wano orbs naturally in his captain ability. Oden's special will change strength orbs into Wano for 2 turns, changes matching orbs into strength orbs, and amplifies the effect of orbs for strength slasher and free spirit characters by 2.75 for 2 turns. So a little bit stronger orb boost, but otherwise still the same effect in his special. His super special has the same condition. The characters that he requires are Kiyomon, Kanjuro, Raizo, Kikunojo, Shiradoji, Inuarashi, Nekomamushi, Kawamatsu, Denjiro, Uminosuke, Hiyori, Roger, and Whitebeard. It's kind of sad that they didn't add characters like Izo in there, but what are you gonna do? And Oden 6 Plus actually changes his super special, which is the first time that's happened, although he's only the second super special character to get 6 Plus. But he will boost top row characters' base attack by 1000 for 1 turn, and changes top row orbs, including block, to Wano orbs, and transforms strength into super strength. So this is incredibly valuable for Oden. Now you guarantee that your 2 top row characters will have increased base attack and Wano orbs. If you swap Oden as captain with another character, you can play with that a little bit, but it's better than what it was before, where it was just himself getting those boosts and the Wano orb. Even if it is just 2 characters getting it, it's better than what it was. His sailor abilities are the same: reduces silence on himself by 5, boosts base attack, HP and recovery, all stats by 60. And his support is unchanged. He still supports the same characters, and he will change their orb to Wano and reduce their cooldown by 1 when they reach the final stage. He does not change block orbs, unfortunately, in his support. His potential abilities are unchanged: crit, barrier pen, and slot bind. But in Rumble, he now buffs special cooldown time and attack of slasher characters, and will buff the HP and speed of strength characters. His Rumble special at 32 seconds will deal 2,500 fixed damage to enemies in large range. I believe this used to be all enemies, but now it is a large range. He will deal 2.5 times his attack to enemies in a large sideways range, and then he will deal he will get a level 8 attack buff to slashers, and then he resists action bind and reduces damage taken from dex enemies. So a big buff in his Rumble and a very viable buff to his captain ability in this 6+. Like, being able to convert dex and tandem orbs to Wano means that strength characters will never have a badly matching orb, but it also means that if you were to use any team of characters, anytime they get a dex orb, they would get a Wano orb, and when you use a special, you will also change strength orbs into Wano orbs. So strength, dex, and tandem all naturally would become Wano orbs for those 2 turns. So I really like Oden's changes. I think they're very powerful and very nice. Small issue is that we don't know where to get all 5 of the skulls to evolve Oden. We only know where 3 come from, and Oden is not summonable on the Roger, Whitebeard, Luffy, Straw Hat Crew banners. He is only recruitable for now on his own exclusive Super Sugo Fest banner. So if you're missing out on Oden, you'll have to go for just Oden. But moving on from Oden to the free-to-play characters, we have Young Garp, which is a cool character to have. Again, it's been a while since we've had a Young Garp. Garp is Strength Fighter Striker, so he works with Roger and Whitebeard. He will boost the attack of Fighter and Striker characters by 3, his own attack by 3.5, HP of Fighter and Striker by 1.3, and makes Strength Orbs beneficial for Fighter and Strikers. The special will go from 11 turns down to 7 with Limit Break. He will reduce Barrier by 1 turn, reduces special cooldown of Fighter and Striker characters by 1 turn, and changes the left column orbs into Strength Orbs. And if your captain's orb is Int, you'll increase the boost effect of Chain Lock buffs by 0.3. So this is one of the cases, like I mentioned earlier, where if you're using Straw Hat Crew and you use Garp Special, that special cooldown for Fighter and Strikers will actually affect all characters. So say you had a slasher driven character, they would also get this cooldown reduction if your captain was Luffy and Straw Hat Crew. One of the glaring issues with Garp is that he doesn't have a great special other than the cooldown reduction. The buffing chain lock buffs isn't something that we've seen a lot of, and it's requiring an int orb on your captain, which may or may not be hard to get, depending on who your captain is. With Roger and Whitebeard, you can guarantee it with swaps, but if you're using Luffy and Straw Hat Crew, there's strength dex, so you might have to use another special or just RNG to get that int orb. Garp's Sailor abilities will restore his special cooldown by 2 when it is rewound, so you can use him to combat a full team special cooldown rewind, and he will make strength orbs beneficial for Fighter and Striker characters. And then for potential abilities, he has crit and double special, and the double special will charge his cooldown to max. And he is obtainable from the Fortnite event that I'm affectionately calling it, where you'll get him from Chopper Man missions. His support for fighters is a attack boost, and in Rumble he will give a speed and attack boost to strength. His special at 31 seconds will deal damage to 2 enemies and buff the blow away chance for strength characters. And he has a 60% chance to resist damage over time. Now, Garp actually pairs pretty nicely with the new Sengoku, who is not from the Fortnite event, but is actually from a new Blitz event that is coming out soon. So new Sengoku is Int Fighter Striker. His captain ability boosts the attack of Fighter Striker by 3.25, HP by 1.2, and makes Int orbs, beneficial for Fighter and Striker characters. His special goes from 12 down to 8 turns with Limit Break, and he will reduce percent damage reduction by 5 turns, makes all color orbs beneficial for all characters for 1 turn, recover 5 times his recovery in HP, so pretty small recovery, health recovery, and then changes the right column orbs, which includes your captain, into Int orbs, and if your friend captain's orb is strength, sets chain boundaries to 2.5 and 25 for 2 turns, so a pretty strong chain boundary. Not as strong as, for example, Wano Law, but pretty strong, and you could pair him up with Garp, use Garp special, use his special, use Garp special again with the double special Limit Break, and you'd get Garp's buffs as well as strength and Int orbs for your crew. And with the Sailor abilities, where he boosts base attack, Fighter and Striker by 60, and makes Int orbs beneficial for Fighter and Striker characters, on a Fighter Striker team, that would actually be a full board of matching orbs with strength and Int. So, not a bad combo, but the utility on Garp isn't fantastic, so have to keep that in mind. His potential abilities are reducing no healing and slot bind, no double special on him unfortunately, so the ideal combo is Garp special, then Sengoku, then Garp again. His support buffs the base HP of fighter characters. In Rumble, he will buff the HP and defense of Int. He will buff the guard rate of Int characters with his special at 24 seconds. And he will restore 15% the HP of Int characters, which probably could be seen as valuable, but there might possibly be better healers for Int. I'm not 100% sure. And then he will heal 150 HP every 5 seconds. So then, moving on from these free-to-play units, we actually have a support limited rare recruit in Ace. Unlike Mihawk, last month's support limited rare recruit, Ace does not have any PvP abilities, so his information is actually quite short. Ace is a strength shooter free spirit character. He will boost the attack of shooter and free spirit characters by 2 and their HP by 1.2. His special goes from 9 turns to 9 turns. No change there. He doesn't have Limit Break. He'll deal damage to enemies. He'll deal strength damage to all enemies, and then changes the orbs on shooter and free spirit characters to strength, and amplifies the effect of orbs on shooter and free spirit characters by 1.5 for 1 turn. Overall, I mean, this special would have been good in like 2017 or 2018. It is not great now. You could feasibly find some ways to combo it with Oden, but it's iffy. His support, however, is very interesting. He supports Luffy, Marco, and Whitebeard, so you could use him on the Luffy and Straw Hat crew. You could use him on Roger and Whitebeard, and what he does is that once per adventure, when the character uses a special, so any special at all, to reduce percent damage and increase defense duration by 2, changes bottom row orbs into matching orbs, and will inflict burn to all enemies that will deal 80 times the enemy's attack in damage, and that will take place at the normal burn time, which is at the end of the enemy turn. So, a support way of getting burn, which is always nice, utility, getting percent damage and increased defense reduction, and all it takes is using a special, and 2 matching orbs on support. So Ace is a very strong support. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you focus on trying to get Ace right away, but he is going to probably be a support that people might lean towards and lean on in the future. And that is everything that has come out in the past few weeks. All this information has been tested at least once, but there might still be some errors. So if there is, be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what I got wrong and what your opinions on these new units are. If there's any creative use to characters like the Straw Hat Pirates, which I didn't really cover too much in this video, but there's a lot of interesting things like using Rayleigh for the Straw Hat Pirates because his buffs will become universal. Like, there's a lot of interesting ways to use the Straw Hat Pirates as captain and exploit some class and type restricted specials on other characters. So I'm looking forward to that. But that will be it for me. So I'll catch you guys in the next video.